This is AV Week, your weekly wrap-up of audio-visual news and information. My name is Tim Albright. I'm your host. Hello, welcome. If you're watching live, good Friday afternoon to you. If you're not, good morning, good evening, good night, whatever it is for you. This week we have on our lovely panel, first up is Mr. Dave Hetz from AVI Systems. How are you, sir?
Doing wonderful. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Also with us is Mark Lavecchia from BMA Software Solutions and the fabulous technology managers-focused podcast, Tech Talk. How are you, sir?
Wonderful, sir. Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. And last but not least, Stuart Rich from IEG, my favorite networking tool that I personally use. So how are you, sir?
Doing great. Thanks for asking.
Good. That's not a commercial. It's actually a true story. So we were at the CI Summit. I told this story off the air. I'll tell it again here because it's a fun story. I was on the elevator. Didn't actually even realize that Stuart was on the elevator with me, and one of the other integrators starts asking what IEG is, and I start doing his pitch for him. So, you know, I just think it's a cool product. So we've interviewed you guys a couple times at CEDIA and at Infocom, and actually we'll see you at ISE. So
that's right.
Thanks to Mr. Hatz and a bunch of other folks. So, all right, this week we have a couple of networking stuff. First, though, this is I don't know. I didn't plan it this way, right? But I have two programmers and a really good networking. Well, three really good networking people and two programmers. And then I guess if you want to count me, there's three. But we do kind of have some programming and networking stories, right? So first up, from CE Pro, emerging technology in cable boxes may render IR repeaters, and I even read IR systems useless. This comes to us. The story goes on to talk about how a lot of the boxes made by AT&T, Uverse, Cisco, Scientific Atlantic, Motorola, which is another popular manufacturer of cable box systems, they're being tricky when it comes to IR, right? And making some of these systems a little bit difficult. If you're not familiar with IR repeaters, basically, for those of us who live in the programming world, it's a big, long cable, and it's got a little bulb at the end, and we make magic happen with code, and somewhere on the end of that, some light flashes, right? And some of these boxes are becoming more and more difficult. There's a Samsung Blu-ray player out there right now that finding the IR receiver on there is nigh on impossible without a rocket scientist degree. So the first question for actually we'll start with Mr. Lavecchia here. So if the IR is becoming more and more difficult, let's say, right? I mean, IR is a pretty simple protocol, but getting it into the box and into that we're trying to control. Does that mean that we're going to start leaning more on CEC through the HDMI? Is that, or are we still not there yet with CEC?
I don't know that we're there yet. I know that we don't see it as much
Okay.
right now. I mean, all of our work is commercial. So when we are dealing with anything that's going to be IR, it's generally an OFE. Somebody's got their cable boxes, somebody's got their Blu-ray player. That's not even 232, but in most cases for us, we run into either communicating 232 or IP at this point. And that's talking codecs, displays, and things like that. So when we run into IR, we're running into almost exclusively OFE. And if we spend more than 20 minutes in the field not being able to communicate with the device, the customer just says, pull it out, I don't care, put something in there that works. I'm not married to it. But again, it's a commercial application. And so it's not as prevalent in our world as it may be in others.
See, that's interesting to me because, I still run into, I'll say media players in general, right? There are still a number of media players that the preferred method is either IR or CEC, whether it's owner furnished, which is what OFE stands for, owner furnished or not, right? It's supplied by the integrator or somebody else. So one interesting thing, Mr. Lavecchia and I are both independent programmers. I work for a company called Innovad. Mr. Hatz, though, is not. He is a programmer extraordinaire for a very nice integration system called AVI Systems. So, Dave, where are we with CEC, or is there another protocol? Mark mentioned IP. Is that the area we're going to go down and just bypass all this other stuff?
Well, it's interesting because if you would have asked me 6 months ago, I probably would have said, even as a company, I don't think we had used CEC more than a handful of times at all. And just within the programmers, or with the programmers within AVI systems, we've started to see more and more cases where we're using a combination of IR and CEC for consumer devices, more because it's the last resort. It's, as you said, they're starting to get more and more challenges with controlling devices. And it's how, the bottom line is, how can we find a way that's reliable to get discrete control for power, for input selection on a monitor, for instance? Sometimes, if we can control it 232 or IP, that's absolutely the first choice. But there's still, we're seeing more and more consumer displays, even though we try to educate our customers to the value of, of a commercial display, we're still seeing more and more consumer devices. And so, as such, we're having to get creative at times about the best way to achieve the reliable, complete control that's necessary, in an installed system. So, I mean, we're seeing sort of a mix of everything. It's one of those, you'd like to think that we're getting more intelligent, we're getting more intelligent devices with APIs, but the reality is it's a total mixed bag.
Okay, so let's take a step back here. 232, and one of you smart people, correct me if I'm wrong on this. 232, RS 232 specifically, is roughly 40, 50 years old protocol, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
IR is about the same age. I mean, maybe, I still remember the first IR remote control I ever saw. It was wonderful because up until that point, I was my father's remote control. Again, 40, 30 years ago. What the freak? It's 2015. Dave is saying it's a mixed bag. I thought we were supposed to get more and more simpler, I guess, as technology kind of moved on. Stuart, this is where I'm going to come with you when it comes to IP and control, not just the control, but the network in general. Are we? I guess the first question is, can our networks handle, putting control protocols? And let's be honest here, a control protocol is not going to flood your system, right? You got to have that conversation with your your IT manager to make sure that they understand that it's not going to flood your system. Most of them won't. But are we there where we can handle that?
Kind of depends on the network at this point. Unfortunately, there's still a lot of people who are not putting in robust networks, and that lack of reliability will create a perceived lack of reliability, which is why people have still been using IR, because until challenges that we're discussing here today, it's kind of the old tried and true. Same thing with 232. People got over the demons, so to speak. What I've seen, challenges I've been fighting since I started my integration firm, I guess 11 years ago now, before I sold that and moved into doing what I do with AVWeek, is that the manufacturers who are implementing IP protocols are not doing the best job for the most part. There's no standardization around most of this, and that's, to me, a bigger challenge in and of itself, is having a reliable IP protocol on top of a reliable network. Reliable networks people have figured out, and with a little bit of money and a little bit of time, anybody can put a reliable network in. Now, getting the manufacturer to provide you a reliable product, that's the one that we don't really have control over if we're not sitting in the manufacturer chair.
And the thing that adds to the complexity to that, Tim, is now you've got a manufacturer they're getting better. They've really come a long way in terms of their IP protocol. We've had some more examples lately of the IP protocol and the 232 protocol kind of mirroring each other, so we're able to keep it simple. But that being said, even if they had it right, you've got to remember you've now got an integrator who may or may not have the ability to speak IT. You've got an end user that may or may not have the ability to talk IT, and they have to go to their IT person. And now all of a sudden, something that's not that reliable to begin with is adding people to it. People are, in a perfect form to begin with, and all that does is burn time and make things, as you were saying before, unreliable. And in the end, IR, he brought up a good point. The reason IR is still around is because in the end, or especially 232, people can rely on it, and they know that it's going to work once it's working. And that's all they care about at the end. They don't care if it's made with licorice. If the thing works, that's what they care about. I want to turn it on, and it works, and when I leave, everybody's got done what they needed to get done. That's it. How we get there, nobody cares. At the end user level.
Yeah. The first question is I want to come back to what Stuart said. Stuart, define for me, if you can, what a robust network is, because you use that term a couple of times. What, in your mind, right, whether it's home and or a work environment, what's a robust network?
Again, that's one of the problems, is that it depends on the setting. What's a robust network for a small, 5-man shop or a residence is not the same as what a robust network is when you have 50, 100, 200, 1,000 employees. It varies, but the things that tie together are, it should be, standards-based, highly available equipment. A lot of times you see, manufacturers coming in, dropping product on, and they've kind of thrown together something that does pass packets and passes as a network by the core definition of what a network is. But at the end of the day, nobody knows how to service it if you bring another company in, and the reliability is not really there as well. And I hate to say, but going with those real name brand companies that have been beat up, tried and true in the enterprise world for decades is a safer bet. Not that there aren't other companies out there making products, but unless you put it through the ringer, let the millions of people around the world who have put devices through the ringer, switches, routers, access points, all of that. There's plenty of really good products out there.
Right. It goes back to the old saying, nobody ever got fired for buying IBM, right? You use the ones that millions of people have already used. So, Dave, real quickly, and I don't want to beat up our manufacturer friends because, I still like doing that. Is there a standard? I mean, Mark mentioned that there are a lot of times here recently, and I'll say here recently because we all have our horror stories. I have my own. There was an amplifier manufacturer who decided to throw a DSP into their amplifier, and the protocol I was being forced to use was IP, and I'm not kidding you. If you're watching video, the IP command for power on was roughly that long, right? It was every bit of 30 characters, 40 characters, and that was power on. Everything you had to do in volume up and all that jazz, and what you're getting back, you had to parse out all that jazz for volume feedback. Dave, is there something we can do to simplify that process, or is there maybe, I don't know, a tricky little tool that we could throw on the network, or maybe make our own little network device that parses back or converts back and forth between IP and 232? I don't know.
Well, the trouble is you've got manufacturers who each can choose to make their own protocols, and so even if we're just talking in the RS-232 world, each manufacturer, wants to make their own protocol because they want to make it that much more difficult for you to put in a brand Y device when your device is obsoleted. So it's actually to their advantage to not have standardized protocols, between manufacturers. Now, that said, the biggest thing that we've tried to do internally is, as programmers, is to create the code modules for devices that we come across, so that at least once one person puts that learning curve at the beginning, they put the time and invest it to get that device working reliably. Now we can at least leverage that and use it across the company, and so we're not having to relearn every single time. In truth, that's about the best that we've found. I mean, I'd love to sit here and say, all the manufacturers are going to come up with protocols that are interoperable and we can just say power on and anything can understand it, but it hasn't happened yet. So, here's to the future.
And one of the things, Tim, that we found to expand upon that is, as an independent programmer, we're hired by companies like AVI Systems to come in with help with overflow with their programming and so forth, or maybe a consultant's project. And one of the things we found with our customers is more of an effort now when they recognize a device that may be sketchy in the field. They want us to call it out to them, bring in the device, and let's test it at a bench. Let's sit and make it work internally. Let's not air that laundry in front of the customer. And if we can't, then if we have trouble, let's get it all out of the way early. We're seeing that trend very heavily for us right now in the commercial world.
Well, that comes back to mocking things up in the shop, dude. I mean, really, that's who was it? The AV9000 crew. I mean, that's kind of what those standards were about. Where, you know what? And this is something I try to work with my clients. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. Right? I mean, you're going to get a call on Friday afternoon saying, "Hey, I need 40 hours of programming by Monday morning because this has got to be installed on Tuesday afternoon." Those are going to happen, but that comes back to making kind of scheduling yourself out, making sure your project manager's on the ball, and getting everything in the shop, and making sure all the buttons work, everything works like you want it to. And then to Mark's point is, you can find those sketchy products, or maybe you have something that was DOA out of the box, or a bad 232 port, who knows? But you find those things in the shop rather than, like you said, Mark, in front of the customer.
Well, and every minute you save up front is 3, 4, 10, 20 minutes in the field that you're spending trying to react to it, and you're never reacting with time to spare. It's always a firefight.
Yep.
And like you say, then you risk airing your laundry in front of the customer, which is something none of us want to do.
No. But the ability to raise your hand early and say, this device, whether you're staging or not, somebody needs to raise their hand early and say, this device could be a problem. Let's hook it up to a little processor. The control processors now are pretty easy to just get a small one, throw it in there, throw a little X panel code on there, test out the strings, see what's going on. Even though everything else is going on, let's spend a few minutes to the side. We see that happening so often right now, and it's great because in the end, nothing kills your margins like an extra trip to the field that you didn't have scheduled. So that's what this is about.
Absolutely. All right, let's talk about a few minutes on smart homes. Sky Bell, the co-founder of Andrew Thomas, said whether or not you like it, you're going to have a smarter home in the next couple of years. This is from digitaltrends.com. And it's an interesting article because basically he says, whether or not you want this, your devices, your gadgets and gizmos are going to be smart over the next few years. So let's take that as let's take that as kind of a starting point. Stuart, we'll start with you on this. If that's the case, then that's going to incredibly impact not only the home network but also the professional network eventually, because one thing at least us in the pro side of AV have noticed is the last few years commercial or consumer electronics has started to push back into the pro realm. Mark's DVD player aside, they really are kind of pushing back into it. So the first question for you is, how do home networks differ from professional networks? And I'm not looking for just, one has a Linksys router and the other of them has big giant things, but from a workflow standpoint, because the one thing about these smart devices is they're all going to want to connect to a network somewhere.
Yeah. Excuse me. The differences really are diminishing. The amount of stress placed on a residential network is increasing. By the end of this year, all 50 states should have some available gigabit internet provider, at least some section of the state. That outbound connectivity is what's helping to fuel this massive shift in how fast gadgets are being produced and put on to use this bandwidth. And it's actually the availability of even more bandwidth will create more gadgets because we just fill it. It's like when first hard drive was in order of K, and you had no way I could ever fill 10 megabytes up, and here we are pushing multi terabytes easily in just about everything that we put out. And it's the same thing on the data side. And I think you actually hit it on the head too. Just bounce over real quick to the commercial side, is that due to the speed, people are now going to be comfortable having all of these gadgets and niceties in their homes, and they go to the office, and if they don't have some of those things, they're going to feel that they just drag it onto the network, and that's going to create security concerns, a lot of headaches and heartaches for IT folks around the world as they're trying to figure out how to handle that. But looking forward, putting my looking glass on, I really feel that most every home network will need to be reliable and more robust, just so that people aren't pulling their hair out all the time. Gone are the days when you can buy that, pick on them, blue Linksys router, and put it in and just have it be good enough. That being said, there's going to need to be a shift in the ease with which these networks are deployed, because not everybody's going to get an integrator who knows what they're doing. Some people are going to do it themselves, and those networks also just need to become easier so they can support all these devices. Google and Nest are never going to help you with your network when Nest doesn't work. They're going to say it's a network problem, go figure it out, and so on and so forth down the line. Your locks, your refrigerators, which, by the way, there was back in, I think it was 2000, I saw a mock-up of the first smart fridge in the Bell South Home Networking Labs.
Mm-hmm.
So they're still not really here the way that I would have expected, but all of it is here, and all of it is coming.
Now, here's the thing. One quick thing. Google will come out and fix it when they start selling wireless access. So. Which is coming very soon, apparently. I did see a smart LG fridge at Best Buy, so I didn't purchase it because it was like $5,000. But
exactly.
I don't. My Cokes are cold enough. Thank you. Dave, we're going to come up with you. What kind of challenges does this present? Like you said, having these devices on the network, and some of these are AV centric, some of them are not. But let's get crazy here. If your fridge can tell you that the door is open or you are out of Coke, then in theory, if it can send out a signal, we as programmers can take that signal and do darn near whatever the heck we want to with it. So what kind of challenges or opportunities does that give us in the world of AV?
Well, I think the very first you have to look at is just pure support.
Okay.
That, before you even can get all, geeky about all the cool things you can do, it's, sort of as Stuart was saying, it's how does, if my dad goes down to Best Buy and, in 10 years buys a smart fridge, now he takes it home and, he needs support on it. So he's going to have trouble figuring it out, which, really leads to sort of the why of, a lot of these haven't taken off yet. But, it's so, getting a support model to find a way to to deal with these is really a huge hurdle. So once you get past that, though, you get into all the potential of what you could do with it. Is and this is sort of one of those questions where are we going to get to a point where products like Wink or Apple's HomeLink or Google or any of these conglomerates are going to be able to come out with a platform that talks to all of your devices in your house, gives you one dashboard where you can operate, where you can control, where you can automate, and do it all yourself. I'm still leery that, it's one of those, I think someone will find a way to get close enough and get good enough for the consumer, but I don't know that it's ever going to get to the level of what we as integrators would immediately jump to as all the potentials. Certainly if we're going to, as integrators, I sit here and think, oh, cool, I could, have my fridge send me an email when I'm out of eggs, and then I can, I'm out of town. If my thermostat drops down, I can have it email me to tell me that, hey, the furnace went out, or I can start to automate things based on all of that. I can, the power's, doing brownouts, so I turn off my printer in my office so it doesn't get, jacked up. Things like that, we immediately jump to all the potentials, but I'm not sure that the average consumer really has that much, is there that much lacking from their life today that these devices can really fill that gap?
Go ahead,
I'm
Mark.
sorry. The thing that immediately you went right to where this immediately took me is like, we're going to come up with smart homes. I'm like, what are you kidding me? I've got the smartest home I'd ever would have imagined. My father, who lived to 93, would walk into my home right now, and I don't have a lot of technology in it, but the simple fact that I have a single remote that I can power up everything, the fact that I have a sound bar below my TV that I can put over to Bluetooth, take my tablet, take my phone, whip up some Pandora, throw some music in the room within 30 seconds, and Frank Sinatra's filling the house. That's pretty damn smart, you know? Now, here's the trick, though. I had a neighbor who called me the other day, upset because they have, I don't know about where you guys are, but where we are, you have only a couple of choices for who's going to provide your network in your house, right? So in our neighborhood, it's AT&T Uverse or, a squirrel in a cage. So we go, the squirrel at least shows up on a regular basis. So every once in a while, we'll have a house drop off in the neighborhood. And people, because, I have a programming company, somehow think that I can go push a button and make their network come back on. The point is, when that network goes down and they have their TV through AT&T and they have their phone through AT&T and those are gone because their network's down, you think they give a crap about their refrigerator? You wait till the TV doesn't work. You wait till their phone doesn't work. Now they're pissed. And so you're going to need the early adopters who really come in on this smart home stuff. We've been hearing about smart homes since I worked at Stewart Film Screen 15, 20 years ago. They're always talking about it, and it's always great and doesn't work. And the average consumer is not going to tolerate their home not working simply because it's supposed to be smart, just because some guy outside took an axe and hit the wrong cable.
Yeah. Well, I look at it as, I bought a new house about 6 months ago. And, I'm just starting to talk about, okay, I've got, things in my basement that I haven't installed yet. And, my fiance has been great. She's made it very clear that I'm free to put in whatever gadgets I want as long as they don't impact adversely her patterns.
Yeah.
And that's a big if. That I have to weigh that myself. If I put something in, is it reliable enough that it's going to pass the muster? And I'm configuring it, and is it going to be good when I'm out of town on a job, or am I going to get the phone call saying, hey, the light doesn't, this fancy automated light you put in doesn't work. I just want a toggle switch.
And when that goes from fiance to wife, that amplifies it. If you think I don't like it as a fiance, wait till she's married to you.
Oh, goodness.
But seriously, I have the same issue at home. My wife loves technology until it doesn't work. Mm-hmm. And then it's here. Fix this.
Well, I guess the one other thing that, I've actually read up a bit on this lately is the overall security issues of some of these smart home products. That, I'm typically not a doom and gloom type of person here, but, if you think about it, and how many Nest thermostats have been sold? If a hacker was able to get into the Nest, mothership, we'll call it, yeah. And on the surface they could cause just, be mischievous, turn your air conditioning on, your heat up, down, whatever. But if you look at it from the perspective of, if they could take and within a region of the United States, turn every air conditioner on at the same moment, think about what that's going to do to the power grid.
Oh, wow.
And it's quite possible. You're getting into, brownouts, blackouts with, because of a smart home technology that someone was able to take advantage of.
Somewhere out there, there's somebody with a pencil going, power outage. Power outage. This is cool. But
but it's another, consequence that, I know research is being done into improving security, but, so far it's just been novelty gadgets, really. But, as these devices continue to, become more mainstream, it is something that, does need to be considered.
Okay, now let me play the technology early adopter for Mr. Lavecchia here. My great-grandfather was born in the 1912. My grandfather was born in 1912, right? So when he was born, there was, one or two radio stations in the whole country. Television was not yet invented. My father was born in 1950. So at that point, there was an entire radio network. the burgeoning television network. I was born in '74 when the internet was still a Department of Defense ideal and property. Nobody had really even knew about it unless you were working on it. At this point in time, my grandfather, who passed away a few years ago, never had internet in his life. Right? Didn't have a use for it. My kids have never known a life without internet. So to them, the internet is part of lights, water, HVAC, right? My grandchildren will grow up most likely, and this is me in my crystal ball, will grow up with things like the Chewy doorknob that we looked at CEDIA, where it has facial recognition, or the ability to walk into a room or into a house and it recognize you based on your bio patterns or something crazy like that. Yes, that is a smart home, and yes, that's a smart home to us. As these technologies kind of get more and more ingrained, and yes, we're kind of the guinea pigs of it on the first iterations, but we were the guinea pigs when we had freaking 56K modems, right? And now I've got something that screams at 60 megs, right? And this is in my lifetime, in the last 20 years, this has happened. But we've all been the guinea pigs, and our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids are going to be the ones that benefit from that, from us being the guinea pigs. So, I see the smart home stuff, and yes, I'm excited because I'm a geek and I'm a technologist. But I think I don't know that a home will be too smart necessarily, quote unquote, because it'll just be what it is, right? It is what it is, and it'll be on the network. And you're right, Mark. The network goes down. Holy crap! The TV is going to go out. All forms of communication will go out. And yes, the other stuff that just happens to be on the network is also going to go down as well. So. Well,
and the other part of that equation is you bring up a good point in terms of what our kids are seeing. Okay, I've got a 10-year-old. He's just loves his tablet. He's technically savvy and so forth. But here's the thing. He's used to a world where he wants to operate something or run something on his tablet. He goes to the Play Store, he downloads it, it opens up, and 99% of the time it works.
Yeah.
That level of thinking is in the commercial world right now, where somebody walks into a room and they want to add a codec into the room, and they have to go out and reprogram the system. And they're like, why do you have to do that? Can't you just download a little app and make it run on your control system? And you go, no, it's not that simple. But as the younger generation gets older, yes, they will be the beneficiaries of the technology that we're trying out right now. But the problem is it better work, because they're also growing up in a world that says I can download an app and it works pretty much seamlessly, and I can go without any effort. The minute they have to troubleshoot is where that's going to be a problem.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Stuart.
I was going to say, put a bow on that one. We've been talking with a lot of dealers, recently about how to, go about selling better networks, because they haven't had to do that in the past. And, one of the things that I don't remember who it was now, said is we started asking our clients if they'd rather go a day without internet or a day without water. And they actually would have people stop and think. They probably come back and say, okay, water, but, I need that, really need it. But, it's not a spontaneous thing anymore. So reliability and accountability is going to be key. But I do take a little bit of an aside to what you were saying in the commercial world, looking for apps, and as the younger generation moves up, younger generation is actually not as concerned with, I hate to say quality, but they would rather take a little step back for the convenience in terms of the robustness of the system and all of the bells and whistles, if they could just get it on their iPad or whatever it might be. So I think that's where some of the biggest shift in the commercial integration is going to be, is some of these really robust, expensive boardrooms are going to be boiled down to, a couple little objects that all tie into these tablets that everybody just carries in on a whim.
Yeah. We do that right now. I can't tell you the number of rooms we do. I know AVL Systems is doing the same thing. How many rooms we built that used to have a control system in there? You walk in, you pick it. Maybe there were only a couple of inputs to the room and a display. But you don't need a control system in there anymore. You put an occupancy sensor in the room. Somebody walks in, powers on the display. You have a wireless access for your for like an AM100 or something like that, or a Brio. You can take your laptop or your tablet, swish it up, send it up to the display. Volume is automatically set, and you're good to go. It's mindless, these rooms, and we do them on a regular basis. Now, the good news is that doesn't completely put programming out of business, because simultaneously we're doing asset management as well. See who's using the room, how often they're using it, what resolution they're using, so they know what kind of resources to buy later on as a company. But you're absolutely right. They would have walk in, have things turn on, just put up their presentation, and get to work.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing is you need programmers for that, right? It doesn't just automatically happen, Mark. You guys have to program that and control it on some level. The user, though, doesn't have to do anything, which is I think which is key in that aspect. So, all right, a couple more stories here before I let you guys get out of here. One is from EE Times, which is electronic engineering. It is a new touch interface. Ironically, I have a bunch of control guys on here, so we'll continue down this road for a second. I wrote some notes for this. First of all, this sucker, the new touch interface, will do hover tracking, which it's an improvement on that. We'll do glove touch up to 5 millimeter glove touch, in other words, regardless of what your gloves you have on. Dave, first of all, why can't we get stuff like this? I mean, and before people scream at me, yes, you can do an iPad or Android device, and you can have that same experience, right? But I'm talking about the suckers, the AMX, the Crestron, the Control 4, those touch panels you buy that have their name on it, and they sell and they get from whoever. Why can't we get this type of technology in our touch panels?
That's exactly the question I had asked when I read the article too. I'm sitting here thinking, I went out and over Christmas bought a new pair of gloves that had the stupid little pad on the finger, just so that I don't have to take my gloves off when I use my phone or use my nose to swipe it, to answer a call. I think number one, it's probably been cost to this point as to why we haven't seen it, in our world, because, there's already the pressure of why would I spend this amount of money to put an AMX or a Crestron touch panel into my room when I can do an iPad? Certainly there's reasons for that, but, we're having to educate our customers all the time about that. And so I think that's probably the biggest factor. I am hopeful, certainly, that, as we move forward, we just talked about the smart homes. Well, if you're putting that smart oven in and you've got a display, it's unrealistic to think that you're going to be touching that, that touchpad without having, wet fingers, or without having, flour and sugar all over your hands and stuff. And so you're actually, trying to use touch, technology that's pretty unforgiving today with just the pure capacitive touch. We're going to be asking more of it. And so I think, I'm really hopeful that technology like this, where we're merging, a couple methods, to really get improved results, is going to start to proliferate just by sheer volume.
Mr. LaVecchia, from your standpoint, why can't we have this?
I've got to go with cost for starters. Okay. I know after working at Crestron for 10 years myself, it was always cost prohibitive in terms of what is the customer willing to pay in order to have this particular feature. And to be honest with you, our goal has always been, and for most integrators, has always been as few buttons as possible, and get the project done, get the system as reliable as possible. One of the things that Crestron introduced at InfoComm a couple of years ago was the ability to not just pick a source and pick a destination, was to pick the source and drag it over to the destination.
Yeah.
Because that's what people are used to. And we found that customers just don't really care about that. No, it was cool because that's something that people were doing. But in the end, it wasn't as seamless as it seemed. What they would rather do is, when they pick a source, have it committed to a destination, so we're taking all of that out of the equation. So when I was reading the article, I was thinking to myself, yes, okay, if I'm on the treadmill and I'm watching Breaking Bad on a thing, and I'm trying to move around with sweaty fingers and stuff, yeah, I can see that. Now I'm in California, so we don't worry about gloves. I don't know what these gloves are that you guys are talking about, but we don't worry about gloves. But what happens is that as long as the thing is protected and it can do what it needs to do when you touch it, people, from our perspective, as long as you push as few buttons as possible to do what they need it to do in the time frame that it needs to be done, how they get there is it doesn't matter to them. Like I said, the glove stuff, we just don't run into that type of thing out here, honestly.
All right. You don't wear gloves when you play golf? You know?
You have time for golf?
It was You forget, my title is Director of Operations. I got time for all kinds of stuff.
No, I was in sales. If you're in a golf course, you're with a customer. If you're with a customer, you don't take a phone call. You take just a customer.
I gotcha. All right. Okay. Last but not least, according to a couple different people, HomeKit, which is it's Apple's smart home device interface, or their network and their programming language. Some of these things are not going to be hitting the mainstream as quickly as some of the folks thought they would. So the first question is, and Stuart, we'll start with you. Besides HomeKit, what else? I mean, what are the other players in this space, or is that too unfair of a question because there's a lot of people trying to do this interconnected smart home thing?
You know, there are a lot of people out there trying to do it, and there's different approaches, and I think it's really interesting to watch the ecosystem evolve. Up until recently, one of the ones that I thought was really interesting and taking a pretty good approach was Revolve, but they got bought and product shut down. So I don't really know, if there's a grand plan behind the scenes that's going to come out of that one. It ties right back to some of the other conversations that we've been having in terms of the complexity of trying to get, if you're not if you can't be a holistic manufacturer of end-to-end solution, which I think everybody finally agrees isn't going to happen. Nobody's going to own the whole scheme. Then that means you have to get different players to play the same game, and it has to be agreed. I mean, it comes back to what happened in the networking world. Interoperability. You should be able to drop any piece from any manufacturer on, and they should be able to talk the same language. True standards and true standards following. And right now we're just watching a fight for who's going to be that central thing, and I think it's going to change 2 or 3 more times before anything actually really settles down. I think there's going to be a lot of early adopters who are, I don't want to say burned, but probably, in terms of spending some money to find out they bet on the wrong pony. And I'm enjoying the watch, but I'm not putting my money on any one winner at this point. Apple definitely has a lot of money and a lot of heft to throw around. But at the same time, they don't truly own the whole world either. And if they're not open, I think that's a failed point from the beginning, which, they're not really, from what I've seen, it's not very clear how open they really intend to be.
The only thing I'll say to that is, I totally agree. Although if anyone could pull it off without being open, I think it's going to be Apple. For everyone else, I would totally say, you're right. We need to, it's what device can talk to the most other devices has the best chance of success. But with Apple, I mean, they have proven time and time again that, they don't have to offer the most features. They just have to get it right and make it easy to use, and it'll be good enough for a lot of people.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Mr. Lavecchia, you have any 2 cents on the HomeKit thing?
No, I mean, most of my world is spent in the commercial market, and the reality is, in our world, we do not recommend early adoption. We've got to get in, we've got to get on, we've got to get out, and we've got to get a cut, move on to the next customer. There's no time for early adoption. In fact, we specifically will bring new products in to test them out. But I was looking over that article, and I had the willies just reading it, going, no thanks. But to his point, Apple could pull it off before anybody else can. If nothing else, they've got the fan base.
Well, and the scary piece is, so, if Apple does come out with HomeLink and start to come in full force, we know we're going to get the phone call next to say, I want to put this into my system. And it's in the back of my head, it's also thinking that, okay, so now we've got something that we know Apple's not going to be open about sharing and, making it interoperable. And now we've got, in the commercial world where I am, we've got these systems that we're trying to make 100% reliable. And now we've got this, Apple's newest that our customer wants, and, can we find a way to make it, make them play together? Time will tell.
Well,
and it also depends on whether they're going to follow the mode of, we introduce something, we have a big introduction, everybody stands in line, they get it, and as soon as you have it, here comes another piece. That doesn't work in the commercial world. You can't introduce something, install it, and 5 days later introduce the next generation. It's a bad plan. That's speculating, but bad.
Well, yeah, I mean, the only Apple pieces that at least I see on the commercial side are obviously the iPads, and depends on who you talk to about the iPads for control, and we still see a number of Apple TVs. Simply,
Yeah, I see that a lot. Yeah.
From the user standpoint, they have Apple devices that they want to wirelessly get up on the display somewhere. So, and they haven't messed with those too many. I mean, those aren't they haven't come up with version 3 and 4 yet. So, all right, guys. Mr. Stuart Wrench from IEG, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
When do you head to Amsterdam for ISE?
Actually head on over to the other side of the pond on Wednesday on the 4th.
Oh, so you're a few days early.
I'm in London for a while for other meetings.
Oh, very cool. So, how can people find out more about you or IEG?
www.ieg.com or give us a call and check Twitter. We do lots of education around networking as well for those who are trying to take it up. We've found actually our best success in the industry is just by teaching and sharing. So come check out some of those classes.
And I've never asked you this, and you can tell me it's none of my business, but what does IEG stand for?
Absolutely nothing. We made it up about 6 years ago now when we were thinking about the business.
For those of you listening and not watching, IEG is spelled IHIJI.
Yes.
And it means absolutely nothing.
Absolutely nothing. .com was available. That was the time when weird .com names before they came out with like the .ly and .io. Probably if we were founded a few years later, we'd have a .ly on the end of our name or something like that.
IEG Lee.
Yeah, that would be even harder, much worse.
All right, there you go. Mark Lavecchia, my buddy, my pal, thank you, sir, from BMA Software.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
Where can people find you?
You can find me bmasoftwaresolutions.com. You can find me and my growing list of 62 Twitter followers at Mark Lavecchia. I don't know 40 of them, but it's growing. And
oh man!
Let's get you 63. But I also would urge, if I could slip in, I would also urge our readers. I'm part of a collaborative effort with your mutual friend Steve Greenblatt,
yes.
With a group called TechTalkAV.com. It is a landing place for technology managers throughout the world to gather, and we do podcasts and so forth with technology managers and with people who have interests in that arena to help educate and bring them together and collaborate. So TechTalkAV.com is a cool place to go if you're a technology manager.
Yeah, it's a good event. It's a good effort. I like it a lot. They had their first event in it was Vegas, right? The first event.
Yeah, it was Vegas InfoCup. Yeah. Nice following.
Great.
Yeah, it's working out really well so far, and we appreciate all your effort to help us out as well.
Yeah, and I still have a heart for the lone technology manager because I used to be one. So it's good stuff. Dave Hatz, first of all, thank you for coming. I met Dave for the first time in person a couple months ago at the AVI Systems event in Chicago, and it was very nice to meet him. So thank you so much for coming on, sir.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure.
And how can people find out more about you or more about AVI Systems? Or
well, certainly check out our website, avisystems.com. A friend of the show, Kelly Perkins, and her team have just rolled out a brand new website within the last couple weeks, really highlighting all the wide breadth of products and services that AVI Systems offers. So, certainly check that out. I'm not a huge force in the social media world, but I do now follow Mark Lavecchia, as of about 30 seconds ago. So,
63.
Exactly. So, but you can follow me there at Dave Hatz AVI, or certainly email. It always gets through to me, dave.hatz@avisystems.com.
All right, very good. That is awesome. Yeah, that's cool. Get. Now we need to get you 64. A couple things as we wrap up here. First of all, Dave was one of our wonderful Kickstarter folks. Actually, first of all, before we do that, AVI Systems are having, if you are in the Denver, Minneapolis, or Dallas area, they're having their local regional shows this spring. So when you go to AVI Systems website, check those out if you're in the area. They're kind of cool, and I'll be there, which I'm not sure if that's a selling point or a detraction, but hey, I'll be there. Dave was one of our wonderful Kickstarter folks. A number of folks kind of gathered together and to send us on our way to ISE. So we are headed there a week from Sunday. The entire clan, well, not the entire clan, but George, Neto, and Bill and I fly out of our respective cities on the 9th, or on the 8th rather. We'll meet up with Stuart on the 9th and that week. For those of you who were Kickstarters, there's a special something coming down the pipeline this weekend. So a couple things. First of all, Infocom's doing some classes. They have their list of classes listed. It'll be on the show notes. I would be remiss if I did not mention that I have been invited to chair the first unified communications panel at ISE, along with Kramer Electronics is hosting it. Some really smart people, and then I'll be there. That's happening on Wednesday of the show at 4 o'clock Amsterdam time. So check that out if you would, please. Also, we are doing a tweet up at the HD Base T booth again on Wednesday. Wednesday's a busy day that week. So I'm doing this UC panel, and then the tweet up is happening at the HD Base T, the HD Base T booth at 5 o'clock during ISE. And Mr. Chris Neto is sending me here some more notes. Apparently, the AV tweets are making the hashtag for the tweet up the second most trending hashtag for ISE. So we appreciate you guys doing that. So if you want you to follow me, I guess it's at TD Albright, Tim David Albright. It's not really my middle name, but it's closer than my real middle name. So TD Albright. But more importantly for me and for everybody else here, go by the website, if you would please, avnation.tv, avnation.tv. You'll find this program and a host of others. We did a special sit-down interview with Kirsten Nelson, the new editor-at-large at SCN. She has moved on from being the editor, which she has been for the last 14 years. She talks about some of her new projects. She talks about Scotch, which is one of her favorite drinks, and some other stuff. So check that out, and a host of others. We have a new AV App show coming down. We've got a bunch of other stuff. Mr. Neto and I actually will be on Shop Talk, which is another wonderful podcast, not on our network, but our buddies over there will have us on Wednesday. So check that out if you would, please. avnation.tv, avnation.tv. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for watching. This has been AV Week.